can I just say that if you use the chat room to submit your questions if you have any, and we'll answer them at the end of the program. So you won't be allowed to speak while the program is being presented. Does that make sense to you all?
Yep.
Good.
Yeah, yes, but I don't know how to use a chat room, but hopefully my technical person will help me.
Okay, good. All right. Well, let's kick off, and as I say, a very, very warm welcome to you. You have tonight, apart from myself, our consultant Alison, who I think you might be able to see there, and the remainder of the other members of the steering group, Diana Ellis from the Bricketwood Residents Association, John Breen from the Park Street Residents Association, Rod Harmon from Chiswell Green, who's sitting up there nicely there, and myself. Dorothy Kerry unfortunately couldn't be with us tonight because at the moment anyway, she's going to try and join us later. She's otherwise engaged at the moment. So let us kick off. Right, okay. I guess that all of you will have seen and read in depth, in detail, the neighbourhood plan. And this evening's presentation is really going to take probably about half an hour, maybe slightly more. And we're going to talk mainly about the policies that are in that plan because they are the important things. So we're going to introduce that. We're going to talk to you about the next step, and then we will take any questions that you have put in the chat room, and we will try and answer them as openly and honestly as we can. If we can't answer them on the spot, then we will email you later on or contact you in some way later on and answer them at that stage. So, Alison, do you want to talk to us about the introduction to the neighbourhood plan first of all?
Do you want to share the presentation on your screen, or do you want me to share it?
If you could share it, or Isabel, if you could share it, that would be great.
Better if Alison does.
Okay, I'll share it. I've got it right here. So
thank you.
Okay, hopefully everybody should be able to see that. Can you all see that on your screens?
Yep.
No.
Yes.
No, what's going on? No, I've no idea what's going on.
What can you see?
I can see my normal blank. Oh, it's okay, you're back.
Okay, perfect. Maybe your screen froze for a moment. But hopefully you can all see the presentation. And as Bill said, if you've got any questions, what we're doing, because there's so many of us, we're recommending people put them in the chat. And if there's a chat button at the bottom of your screen, if you hover your mouse around, and that will bring up a little sidebar where you can type in any questions or thoughts as we go along. So hang on a sec. Let's move down. Okay, so covering this evening, we're just doing an introduction to what the neighbourhood plan is all about, and then Bill will take us through the policies by the different topic areas that we're covering, and then we'll talk briefly about the next steps of the process, because it's an ongoing process that we're slowly moving towards the end of, and then there might be a chance for us to take some of your questions from the chat, and if we don't have time for some, we will certainly get back to you with the answers. So sorry for the bit of the wordy slide here, but there's quite a lot of useful information for those of you that might not know so much about neighbourhood planning. Some of you may be more familiar than others, but effectively neighbourhood plans came into being in 2011 when the government decided that local people should have a bit more involvement in what happens in their areas, rather than simply relying on the local plan to carry out sort of thoughts about how development should take place. So we've put together a neighbourhood plan that will effectively set out development and policies for the next 15 or so years. And the purpose being that any planning applications that come into St Stephen Parish as a whole will not just only have to have regard for the policies in your local plan, which is somewhat outdated now, but will also have to have regard for the policies that are in our neighbourhood plan. So what that means is that we can have much more say over the really kind of local detail that we want to make sure happens and that we're thinking about if planning applications come forward. It does form part of the development plan for the district, so it carries equal weight in decisions. And the policies that we can include in our neighbourhood plan, as I've said here, can be about protecting things that we value. So for instance, green spaces. They can set out criteria against which planning application and other things will be decided against. So for instance, design criteria, how we want to make sure that any proposals are benefiting the environment, for example. And also site allocations, we have the opportunity to do those. And the group has worked very hard about this, looking at, because we do have an identified housing need in the parish. That has been shown through evidence, and the group has done a lot of work to try and understand how that might be delivered against. Now, one of the things that we'll say up front is that the plan as it stands does include site allocations. However, it's very unlikely, if not impossible now, for us to take those forward, unfortunately, because of the withdrawal of the emerging local plan, because we needed the local plan as it was cast to set out what we might say as sort of strategic hooks upon which we could have set our site allocations. So at the moment they're in the document, you'll see them in there, and you're very welcome to comment on them, because I think we would value your views on them anyway, but I'll make it very clear up front that they will not be going ahead in the next iteration of the plan. And then just the final point here that, you know, a neighbourhood plan, we don't have to do one, it's an optional thing, but as I've said, at the moment, all your planning applications are guided by a planning policy that dates back to 1994. That predates a lot of the national planning policy guidance, and it's fast becoming out of date. And with the new one just having been withdrawn, it's going to be some years before that gap is filled, and you risk having, without a neighbourhood plan, very little control over what happens locally. So it's important to have one. It's important to have one that we like and we want and we like and we agree with. And equally, it's important because of the changes that are happening at a national level as well. So lots of reasons to do this, and your views at this stage are invaluable to us, and we will hear more about the plan from Bill. Are you happy to carry on, Bill?
Okay, so here we are. This is policy number one, the spatial strategy, which sets out where development might be directed within this parish. You will all presumably know that the majority of St Stephen's Parish is within the Green Belt. And so it's very, very difficult to select pieces of land on which to develop. We were instructed, and it's a national policy, that we couldn't refuse, we couldn't say no to any development at all. There had to be a yes, there will be some development. So our problem was, where do we put this development? And what we have tried to do, and I think been successful in doing, is we have selected pieces of green belt which don't necessarily, in our view, fulfill the original purpose of the green belt. And there are 5 reasons why that green belt was installed, mainly to protect coalescence between various aspects of other development. But we've done what we can, and the 5 pieces of land which we've actually selected, I think you will probably agree, although you may not agree with the development, but you probably agree that they're the most suitable in the area. So let's then go to the next slide. Can we go to the next one, Alison? Yeah. Okay. So housing and design policies, we had the option then, or we have the option of deciding where the housing allocation goes. We have to an extent the option of deciding design policies, style, shape, etc., and what sort of dwelling mix. Now, when we did the community survey at the very beginning of our neighbourhood plan, it was patently obvious to us that people in the parish wanted not big houses, but smaller houses of perhaps 2 or 3 bedroom, and in some cases single bedrooms. And we were determined to make sure this happened. That hasn't all happened, because there is one particular piece of housing allocation which probably won't fit that bill, but the others really will. And the design of these developments is really in our hands, or in the hands of the members of the public parish, because they can decide that. So those 3 policies, 2, 3, and 4, are really setting out what we would like to happen, where we would like it to happen, and the style in which it should happen. So let's move on to the next slide. Right, okay. We were very conscious that the protection of green spaces, the environmental policies, footpaths, woodlands and rivers should be protected hugely. And although you will know, and those people who particularly live in Park Street will know, that some small pieces of green space have already been sold with the prospect of development. That doesn't mean to say they will actually happen, but they have been sold for considerable sums of money, and they will, in our view, be protected if humanly possible. So minimizing the environmental impact on this development is a big consideration for us. We also want to protect the local habitats and local species. That's both flora and fauna, that we will do. The protection and the retention of the local green spaces. There are 7 green spaces highlighted in the neighbourhood plan, and all of those will we are determined will be protected. And those green spaces are quite a few in Bricket Wood. So those people who live in Bricket Wood, there's Ashridge Drive Green, Broadacre, Forefield, Juniper Avenue, and in Chisel Green, South Close, and Sunnydale Green, and in Park Street, Mayflower Road, and Orchard Drive. So we're determined to protect those green spaces. Also, the protection and setting of the function of the River Ver. There's been a lot of problems with the River Ver recently, particularly in the area of the Berrydale Lane allotment site, where it has been flooded because of some action which was taken by the Environment Agency, and has caused some horrendous damage at that location. So we are determined to protect that. And the River Ver, as you probably know, is one of the very important chalk streams which exist in the country, and they are going to be protected as far as we are able in the neighbourhood plan. The green infrastructure and development and maps of the wildlife corridors worthy of protection are in the neighbourhood plan, and they will continue to be preserved as far as we are able. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, transport and movement policies, public transport, traffic and parking. it's fair to say that transport, as far as the main roads in this parish are concerned, we didn't have an awful lot of option in dealing with. They're dealt with by the county council and government agencies, Highways England, etc. And we didn't have a lot of chance or a lot of choice as to what we would do, but improvements to local key junctions and pinch points have been suggested. So that whether anybody actually takes in notice of what we say is a different matter. You will probably also be aware that Herts County Council have conducted a consultation on the A414 corridor, which a large chunk of that goes through the parish, and also the 405, which is an important piece of road between here and Watford. And that is also included, or part of that is also included in the consultation of the 414 corridor. Off-street parking is one of these problems now, which we are determined will be safeguarded. Parking places, and in particular in the village centres, both Chiswell Green, Bricket Wood and Park Street. The other aspect which we had some say in, but don't have an awful lot of control over, is the bus services and the community transport. Now, some parishes have managed prior to COVID and successfully getting up their own transport system, small minibuses to take local people around. We haven't managed to do that, and in fact, we didn't attempt to do it. So the transport services and infrastructure is, although important, and we would like to see the development of, further development rather, of the Abbey Flyer line, if humanly possible. Now we seem to have gone back a little bit here for some reason. Let's, okay, off-street parking. Provision for walking and cycling. It won't have escaped your notice, I'm sure, that since the lockdown, both 1 and 2, people are being encouraged to cycle and to walk. And we have, as far as possible, been very firm in preserving both footways, bridleways and cycle paths. And the recent improvement to the cycle path, which runs through Greenwood Park, is quite a tremendous achievement by HCC. So that's been done very, very well. Slight erosion where the dip comes down by the doctor's surgery at Watford Road, but otherwise it really is a great improvement. I walked it on Sunday afternoon and for the last time, and it was pretty good. The improvement of the bridleway network. Now, I'm not a horseman, but I do know that we have an interested party in horses with us tonight. So, John, you'll be delighted to know that the neighbourhood plan supports proposals that will augment local the bridleway network. So, I'm hoping that will go down very well. All these aspects, like the footways, the cycleways and the bridleways, are important for us to retain. Let's move on to the next one. Where are we now? Okay. Just wait for the next slide. It's not moving for some reason.
It's there.
Oh, here we are. Yeah, there we are. This is about the community and the community facilities. We are pretty well served, I think, although we could do with some improvements in them. Things like doctors' surgeries, educational establishment, recreation in general, and community facilities. I think each of the parishes, each of the wards of the parish rather, have doctor's surgeries, either greater Park Street Surgery at Withy Place and St Luke's at Bricket Wood, all very well served. Also, the 4 schools, and we only have 4 schools in the parish, Mount Pleasant Lane, Howwood, Killigrew and Park Street. We don't have any secondary schools, but we did comment on that, but there's no provision to provide secondary schools in the neighbourhood, and but the nearest ones are quite close and easily travelable too, so that's not too bad. The leisure facilities for children and teenagers, we've got 6 open spaces within the parish, and 5 of those have children's play areas. We will admit that we don't have too much for the between 14 and sort of 18-year-olds, but that hasn't gone amiss, and we are looking further at that at a later stage. So the young children are well provided with. We have some designs, and the parish has some designs on extending Woodbury Field to add some additional pieces in there for slightly older children. I think in the past we have tried to, the parish has tried to set up youth clubs for older children, but for some reason or other hasn't worked. And mainly I think that's getting people to run them. The protection of public houses, a very important subject to many. We have seen the reduction in public houses in the parish over the last few years. And those of you who know Park Street particularly well will realise that at one stage there were 9 public houses in Park Street. There are now only 2. And that the cause of that is manifold, not least of which the price you can now pay and get your own alcohol from supermarkets and like facilities. But the protection of those public houses as a community facility is important, and if we can protect those, all well and good. We have policy 18, allotments and community growing spaces. The protection of the ones that we've already got are vitally important. And for those of you who know the parish well, we've got 2 sites in Tippendale Lane, one at the Watford Road end and one at Tippendale Lane end, and a smaller site in Park Street Lane. So they are important. I mentioned earlier on the Berrydale Lane, but they are not parish facilities. They're district council facilities which are leased to the Berrydale Allotment Association. So they're not a parish facility. Retirement and care home facilities, which is mentioned in the plan, and when the community survey was set out originally, there was quite a call for retirement and care home facilities, and the proposals at Burston Nurseries, which were rejected by the district council, and for 2 real reasons. They have now, or are about to, submit a further application for care home retirement facilities without the care home facility at all. So there will be some retirement homes there which will aid people who want to stay in the neighbourhood. Young people who want to stay in the neighbourhood will be able to get houses in the neighbourhood, whilst their perhaps older relatives will be able to purchase places at the retirement home facility. I've already mentioned the Burston Nurseries. This is on page 60 of the plan, and supporting those facilities for retirement properties. Okay, local businesses. This was quite a tricky one, really. There are a huge number of businesses within the parish, all conducted from people's homes. And although we don't have a list of all of them, there are a considerable number of them. They are viable businesses, and at the moment, as far as we're aware, going strong. The local businesses, we have a large site, industrial site at Park Street, and there are various other little aspects of business and economy going on throughout the rest of the parish. So we are likely to support those. The village retail areas are vitally important. We have lots of small shops in all 3 wards of the parish, and they're encouraged to stay. The protection of the existing employment premises or land, jobs within the parish are vital. We are seeing less and less or fewer people traveling, certainly at the moment, into London, and so local employment is vitally important. There is a view expressed that high-speed broadband, if we need it, will be installed in any case, and I think we've got a promise from one of the Prime Minister himself that high-speed broadband is essential and will be available to everyone when they want it very shortly. So securing that when development takes place is also vitally important. Where are we now? Okay, let's crack on. Next slide. Okay. These are the site allocations. I said earlier on that we chose these sites for a number of reasons. They had to match a particular criteria, and they all did. They are all within the green belt. But we, as Alison said earlier on, there needs to be this strategic hook. Once the local plan is up and running, the one that exists at the moment from 1994 isn't too helpful to us. And one of the reasons we're removing these site allocations from the plan when it goes to the district council is that we cannot support, or they cannot be supported without this strategic hook. Although the National Planning Policy Framework did kind of give us an indication, and it says where a need for changes to the greenbelt boundaries have been established through strategic policies, detailed amendments to those boundaries may be made through non-strategic policies, including neighbourhood plans. But we have to have that strategic hook, otherwise the district council will not entertain it. So the land at Orchard Drive is that large stretch of land at the top of Orchard Drive, which is separated by a travelling unit. And at one end, it has the play area from Mayflower Road, the children's play area, and the exercise area. So that's up for development. Applications were put in quite a little while ago now, and they were rejected for a number of reasons, but it is quite a tricky piece of land. Excuse me, quite a tricky piece of land. And the houses that applied for was 30, I think, if my memory serves me right, and that was rejected as being too many. There is Orchard Drive at that stage that place is quite narrow, and it's quite tricky to get access to it. But it's in our site allocation, so we just wait and see what happens. The land at Park Street Baptist Church, which everyone will know lies between Orchard Drive and Tippendale Lane, is an important piece of land and quite a large chunk of land. It was to be developed by a fairly large company. I'm not sure how they are situated with the Baptist Church now. Their tenure was due to finish very shortly. And policy 27 is the land south of Park Street Lane, which is that piece which lies between the M25 and the one entrance to one of the roads off Park Street Lane. Memory has just gone completely blank at the moment. There we are. And it lies opposite some fairly large houses. But there is a barrier, we're recommending a barrier between the M25 and the housing development, so that there is some protection for people who are going to live there. The land at the rear of 42 and 75 Bucknell's Drive in Bricket Wood is a small piece of land there which has been earmarked for development by other people, but we are putting there as a piece of site for allocating housing development. And there is an entranceway just off Bucknell's Drive, not Bucknell's Lane, but Bucknell's Drive, and that's suitable for a small number of houses. And the last one there, section policy S29, is the land at Frogmore, which for those who know the A5183 at Frogmore, it lies behind what was at one stage a tyre exchange unit. It looks a bit tatty at the moment, but it lies behind that at the old tyre place and the home park at Frogmore. And I think that has probably been on the cards for a little while, but has now really taken shape. So let's move on. Where are we now? That's slide 10. Okay. So we're the next step. Alison, would you like to take us through these next steps, please?
Yes. So it's been quite a long process so far, but the plan is covering a lot of things. So we're currently at stage 1 in this particular table. We're doing what we call a Regulation 14 consultation on the pre-submission version neighbourhood plan. So this is not the plan in its final form. This is almost the draft plan, if you like. And at this stage, we are thoroughly encouraging as many people as possible to submit their views via the different routes, which will be listed on the next slide, because the steering group will be looking through in detail all of the comments that come back in order that we can then think about how the plan might be amended, perhaps to take account of some of those. Not only are the community going to be commenting on this draft, but we have to send it to a variety of national people and organisations. So for instance, Historic England will be interested in seeing it and they will submit comments. Obviously St Albans, people like Natural England and the Environment Agency and others will all be very interested and will have views and advice on how to improve the plan when taking it forward. So that takes us to stage 2. We review those comments, we amend the plan, and then at that point we submit it along with some supporting evidence and other documents to St Albans. And effectively that's really the timescale slightly out of our control at that point, because St Albans take over what happens next. What they will do is conduct a further consultation on what's now called the submission version plan. So this is the plan in its more final form. So there'll be another chance for everyone to read it again, see if their comments were made and how it impacted, and have another chance at feeding in whatever they want to say about it. All of those comments, and again, that will include statutory organisations, will be sent to an independent examiner whose job it is to examine the plan and just make sure that it meets what's called the basic conditions. And these are set out in legislation. And there are a series of conditions that include things like, do the policies in our plan conform to the strategic policies in the St Albans plan and also the National Planning Policy Framework? Have we taken into account things like environmental factors and so forth? And he or she will be looking at all of those things, and then we'll put together a report to make perhaps some recommendations about some modifications to the plan, maybe some of the drafting of the words and so forth. And St Albans with St Stephen Parish Council will collectively decide if they're going to accept that report and make any changes necessary. And if they do, then the plan can proceed to a local referendum. And that's organised and paid for by St Albans. And that will be a simple, do you want this plan to inform planning decisions in the parish? And it'll be a yes or no. And a simple majority will bring the plan forward and it will become part of the planning suite at the district level. So there's still a little way to go, but we're now starting to get into the formal parts of it all. So it will keep moving along and there are kind of time expectations that we would hope that to happen within. So we come to our final slide, which is perhaps the most important from our perspective in terms of signposting you to the website and to the questionnaire, which is there are a lot of policies in the plan, so it is quite long, but it's really important that even if you don't fill in all the questions, fill in the ones that you want to fill in and give us any comments you like that way. If you don't want to do it on SurveyMonkey, of course, you could email in and all the details are on the Parish Council website, or you could even use pen and paper if you wish and write in a letter to us. Any way you wish, it will all come to us and it will all be taken account of. So, so please do that.
Okay, thanks, Alison. So yeah, that's vitally important that you do actually complete either the SurveyMonkey questionnaire or write to us, because your views are important. It's the neighbourhood plan and you're part of this neighbourhood, and please fill it in or send us your questions. So we come now to the section where we're going to have a look at your questions on the chat line, and if we can possibly answer them, we will.
So there have been quite a few questions coming in. I've been trying to answer them as we go along. I don't know, is everybody able to see the chat?
Yep.
So, I mean, I don't know if I want to summarise any. Let's have a look. There was a question from somebody in a neighbouring parish that was quite interested in what this means for them. And I just reiterated that this neighbourhood plan is purely for the St Stephen parish boundary. We can't go beyond that. That's set in the legislation. We've applied to be a neighbourhood area, and so the policies will only apply within St Stephen. Anyone outside will either have their own neighbourhood plan or would have to simply think about what the St Albans policies are saying in terms of what development happens to them. There was a question here about, this is an interesting one actually. We are looking obviously to look at developing and hoping to get more smaller dwellings, because that's what the housing needs surveys and assessments have revealed that there is a need for. And somebody has asked here, Galaxy Tab A has asked, why then is the planning department continually allowing people to turn 2-bedroom bungalows into 4-bedroom houses? Which is a very good question, and something that certainly we can consider in the next iteration if that's something that comes out overpoweringly in the consultation. There is something we can perhaps do about that. Targets for clean air zones doesn't usually come under planning, unfortunately. So although we can be mindful of them, and many of our local transport policies there are effectively trying to encourage more sustainable modes of transport, we can't actually include targets on clean air zones, sadly. When do we need the responses to the plans submitted by? Could you remind me of the deadline, Bill?
It's the 30th of November.
Yeah, so the very end of November.
30th of November, yeah.
No idling zones around schools. That would be done, I suspect, at your Herts County Council. There is a department there that deals with air quality. it might be shared with some of your neighbouring areas as well. But they would be the ones to contact about that. I've seen a map that shows my plots outlined in orange. Perhaps we'll come back to you separately on that, Sue, because I might need to look into exactly what that means. Improving facilities for cycling and walking and active travel. Well, I think we are trying to encourage the provision of facilities and so forth for cycling, for cyclists, and looking at improving walking routes and bridleways where possible. So not just keeping the existing ones, but making sure that we can expand that network as need be. But that's a really good point. And if you've got particular ideas of projects or areas, then again, please do send them in, because what I haven't mentioned actually as part of this is that the section at the end of the neighbourhood plan has a series of what we call non-policy actions, which are things that have been raised as important by the local community, but don't necessarily fit within a planning policy because they're not planning per se. But we've captured them in this table at the end, and the hope would be that some of any developer contributions coming into the area or any funding for grants and so forth might help to deliver some of those projects. Thanks for that comment, Carol, about multi-user tracks, including horses. I suspect you are the horse woman that Bill was mentioning earlier. Have I missed any questions here? I'm just having a scroll up again.
There's one which is from Sue Dias. I've seen a map which shows my plots outlined in orange and labelled 414. Where have you seen that, Sue, please? Obviously can't hear. No.
I'm
not sure what that refers to.
I can hear you. I'll show you my phone. I've got a map on my phone. It was on our neighbourhood plan. I don't think, it might come backwards to you, but that's showing my bit of Ragged Hall Lane, and I'm number 4. I'm labelled 411, and I've got the 2 plots labelled in orange, the 2 smaller plots on both sides. This area.
Bill, I can answer that. I can tell you where those come from if you want.
Yeah,
yes,
okay.
Please.
They come from the initial consultation on the St Albans local plan, probably, I don't know how many years ago now, where when they did the consultation with the public on the St Albans local plan, every site that was put forward was identified on a map and colour coded as to its suitability, and then completely ignored when they went for broad locations instead. Just for you to keep that and put it again when they reconsult on the St Albans local plan, because they are likely to be looking at smaller sites again. But it's not relevant to the neighbourhood plan or St Stephen's, unfortunately. Well, unfortunately for you.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate your answer. Can I just ask what does the yellow part of it mean, though?
The yellow means...
Sorry, the orange, sorry, orange.
So, yes, my recollection was that it was colour-coded dependent on how suitable it was, and red means not at all, orange means not very, yellow means more likely, and green is most likely.
Okay.
But the criteria they used will be changed. So,
can I just add a point to this?
Thank you for your help, David.
Thanks, David. There's a couple of questions on there, excuse me, about the strategic rail freight interchange. Unfortunately, at the moment, we don't know what's really going to happen about that. There is a very strong feeling that it's no longer required, and I think our current MP is talking to the Transport Minister on those sort of grounds. it's always been my prediction that the SFRI will not ever happen, and I still maintain that. What will go in its place is another matter, and you will remember, I think, the suggestion that something like 3,200 houses occupy that site. That's been removed from the local the last stage of the local plan, the local St Albans district plan, and I don't think that will appear there again. There are various other suggestions that have been made for that ground, but it's greenbelt again, and I think it won't be an SRFI.
Somebody's asked a question about the broad location in Chiswell Green. I mean, again, this all hinges on the future of the emerging local plan, which obviously allocates that site. At the moment, the future of the emerging local plan is in very much question. So I suspect nothing at the moment will happen in the near future on that site either, unless a way forward can be made to bring forward sites in advance of a local plan, which seems unlikely in itself. So something we can do in the neighbourhood plan, which we've included, is identifying some of these particular pinch points on roads and making sure that any proposals that come forward have to really bear those in mind and not add additional pressure to them, or at least make sure that their own impact is going to be adequately addressed. Bill's got a question about the builders merchant site in Mill Lane. I don't know if you know.
This, I think this formed part of the country park aspect of the SRFI. So what will actually happen to that, we don't really know at the moment. So I hope that helps, Andy. You're right, it is more Mill Lane, yeah. Have we got any other questions at all?
What I would say again is if you haven't had a chance to read the document, it's quite a long document, but you could always dip in and out on these lockdown evenings. I would encourage you to have a look at it because if you're wanting to feed in, it's really useful to sort of be able to say, you know, this policy here I'm not really sure about, or this fact isn't quite right. So it doesn't necessarily mean reading every section. If you're only interested in the environment, you know, hone in on that one. If you're interested in reading the whole thing in its entirety, then please feel free. But you know, it really is, this is going to be your plan for your area. So it really is important that you feel you've had a say.
Okay, well, if we don't have any more questions,
Carol is just, sorry to interrupt you, Bill. The Black Boy shops in Bricket Wood.
Oh, right. What? I'm not sure what you mean by that, Carol.
I'm not Carol, but I think I can probably explain that. It's Linda. In
Hello,
the
Linda.
plan, the shops at Black Boy are not mentioned. So in Bricket Wood, it says we have 2 parades of shops, and in fact we have 3. And I brought that up recently at our residents meeting, and Diana informed me that because that had a fish and chip shop, but in fact the convenience store there had closed. At the time of writing this document, it wasn't included because it wasn't actually shops, it was only a fish and chip shop. But subsequently, the shop has reopened, and that's what the confusion is, I think.
Okay, that seemed to make sense, yeah. Okay, because there are 3, that's the Oakwood Road, the Black Boy, what was called the Black Boy shops, and the one off
Old Watford Road.
Yeah.
Bill and Linda, that's absolutely right. When I went down to assess the shops, the supermarket was closed and there was nothing there except the fish and chip shop. So we couldn't justify that parade as being a parade of shops at that particular point in time. But now, certainly with the new Costco, we have to include it. You're absolutely right, Carol.
Yeah. Okay.
No, thank you, Lawrence. I mean, I think it's given the situation, it's obviously been very difficult to try and reach out to people. Normally, we would perhaps have held a few public exhibitions around the parish, but it's been impossible to coordinate something like that. So I really hope that everyone has found this useful. Somebody asked earlier if we'll be sharing the slides afterwards for anyone who couldn't join us this evening, and the answer is yes. We've recorded the session, so we shall be able to post that online on the website. And please do let your friends and neighbours and others know to come and have a look, and encourage them to take part.
Excuse me, Bill, may I speak? It's Sue Featherstone.
Thank you, Sue.
Hello, thank you.
Right.
Just to say, it was a phenomenal amount of work that's been done, and I have read it from cover to cover. Just one small point. I will be sending in some comments because there's quite a few things about highways there that I'd like to make comments on. Just one typo. A SID is a speed indicator device, not what you've got in your plan. It's a very small point.
All right, we'll take that on board soon. Thank you. Yeah.
And I'll send in my other comments, if I may.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Nice to see you. Thank you for coming along. Anyway, it's very nice to see you.
Thank you, and the same. Thank you very much indeed. But fantastic work done by everybody. It's wonderful.
Can I just end up by saying, if nobody else has any more questions, just end up by saying thank you all for coming along. It's nice to see you all, and I hope it's been useful to you. It seems to have been very useful from what people are saying. But let me reiterate what Alison has already said. Please, please complete the Survey Monkey survey, or write in with your comments and your observations. Do remember, this is your neighbourhood plan. It's not a plan solely for the use of the steering group. It's your neighbourhood plan. If you want to see the neighbourhood plan take shape and what we've suggested, then there is a referendum, as Alison said earlier on. There is a referendum which will take place hopefully sometime next year, let's have your comments so that we can bring things or put things in line with your desires. Obviously, not everything you want will be taken into account, because that would be ridiculous. But let's have a crack at it and let's see how far we get. So thank you very much, everybody. Do take care. Remember Boris's words: hands, face and space. So stay well, and hopefully see you all shortly.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
everyone.
Bill.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Alison.
Can I ask the steering group just to remain online, please?
Okay, I'm online.